Check, check, check. Everybody check, check. Come on. All right. Come on, everybody. Look out. Okay. Three and two. Hit that light. Here we go. Hey. Good morning. Happy hump day. He was born in the summer of his 27th year, coming home to a place he'd never been before. Points Rockies in this particular back and forth. I think we're all very surprised, very fascinated by this turn of events. Lots to unpack in this because for those of you that are just waking up from a chemically induced coma, or I don't know, even if it's just leftover turkey, Trump has been kicked off the Colorado ballot for at least the general election. I don't know what the rules are as far as the parties being able to have their own primary. Because the primary is technically it's an intermixing of a private organization, which are the parties themselves, and the state itself in terms of who it's going to offer up as presidential candidates, for the federal election and other stuff. So there's a real question in my mind about the legality of his being able to raise money in the state, because he can't be on the general, even if the Republicans put him on the primary with the assumption that he'll be available there or something like that. It's very friggin' strange. It's just fun. So we shall see what we shall see. But first, hello, chat room. Hi, it's nice to be back here. I should have restarted my computer this morning because when I woke it up, it was very confused. All the monitors had flipped around, and my little teleprompter thing, which I became very used to very quickly, isn't doing anything, which I find very odd. So we shall see. Hold on, let me see if maybe I can pop this up in here. There we go. No, it's just being a dick. Okay. I don't care. We'll manage. I'll fix it before the afternoon show when I actually kind of need it or whatever. But if I'm looking up at the chat again, like old times, that's what Chip was busy while I was gone. Oh my God, he was pissed that he thought I was leaving for a long stretch again because I've gone away wait till the touring starts. They're going to all be a mess. But so I roll in at like 2:00 in the morning. He's like, "You're up, food time." And I'm like, "No, that doesn't happen until 5 a.m. I'm not feeding you in the middle of the night and developing that habit." So I go to bed, and he wakes me up on cue at 10 after 5, after 3 fitful hours of sleep of him wandering all over me. And then I get up and feed them, then I go back to bed, and I have an alarm set and all that stuff, giving myself enough time to sleep, allegedly. And he does it again. He goes through the whole cycle again when my alarm goes off, like before my alarm goes off, basically that it's food time. Like he's like, what do you think I don't drink. I know I fed you. This didn't happen. Like, I don't know what you expect, but I'm not feeding you. And he did the whole act, the same thing. And then when I didn't feed him because I didn't get up, he starts doing the walking around to wires around the room that are, like plugs and stuff, and going, what if I started chewing on that? Then you'd have a dead cat on your hands, and all because you wouldn't feed him. Is that what you want on your conscience? Oh my God. I had to get up again and like carry him out of the room and just kind of do a reset. When he got on top of the air filter we have in the bedroom, we have one of those like, HEPA filters to keep all the cat hair out of our nostrils while we sleep. And I don't know if some of you may not know this, but Chip has learned to sit on top of the thing because it's set on the low quiet setting, and tap the button on the front of it that changes its setting to high, which makes it sound like someone is vacuuming the room all the time. And I'm like, you motherfucker. Booba. He just sits on top of it. So, it's amazing. Good morning, everybody. Cats are the house overlords. They are. Yeah, Chip has not missed any meals. Exactly. He's very smart. Well, pets are like their owners. Um, what? And I just, yeah, he's very clever and he's a bit of an asshole. Gee, I wonder where he got that from. I can't imagine. He literally just, he'll sit there on the, like, as a warning, like, I'm on the filter. I will be, you're awake, but I will wake up Summer and she will be a grumpapus if I hit that button. So you can either feed me or deal with that wrath as well. Huh? You interested? Huh? Hey, you son of a bitch, you. Huh? Here it comes. Buh, buh. Like, and then I like, this is, and by the way, this is how, like, unnecessary upgrades happen in a house where you're like, I gotta have a air filter that I can control with Siri. I gotta have a air filter where I can just tell her to change the setting. If I did that though, Chip would learn to speak. He'd be able to mock, like, that's where we find out he's got like crow-like mimicking powers. All right, so fairly hilarious last 24 hours. Let's get to it, chat room, because the Colorado, so there are it's fascinating because well, first of all, let's start with insurrection. Well, here, I'll put up the 14th Amendment. We'll just look at it together so we can clarify what the living shit is going on here. No, I don't want that. I want get over here. This one. So this is the 14th Amendment, and this is kind of the important part. This is Section 3, and this is the part that they ruled on. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment disqualifies any person who has taken an oath to support the Constitution of the United States and then engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid and comfort to the enemies thereof, from holding any federal or state office. Congress may remove this disability by a vote of 2/3 of each house. Section 3 was enacted after the Civil War to exclude. Okay, so couple of things. That thought, just like Rudy and Jillian, that she would defame and lie about elections on social media rallies without consequences. She thought wrong. Agreed. And this is going to be especially around Jan 6, like as Jan 6 gets, more people get found and locked up for their actions because they fucking posted it. You're going to see, the standard that makes this a failed, I would like to say. Can I just say, it doesn't have to be a successful. It just engages in insurrection or rebellion against the same. So you don't have to actually succeed. You can have a fucked up, stupid insurrection and still, like, Nichols and McVeigh, had they survived, been given had their sentence commuted, and then eventually gotten out of jail at 78 years old, Timothy McVeigh could not run for office federally, or he could run for local office, which is fucked up, but that's not the I guess the direct powers of the federal government. It's not in the Constitution. Therefore, locally, if you want to create an office, a mayor or county commissioner or something like that, which is not in the Constitution, technically speaking, fucking if a serial killer gets his sentence commuted because he's got dementia and he's supposed to live at home, to ride it out, some Texas county could make him, the county commissioner. That's and the federal government couldn't stop him. There's just a glass ceiling on the offices he could serve, right? So in this particular instance, there's two things that I think are very important in this Colorado ruling and the Supreme Court thing. And this is informed largely by my love of Lenny Bruce and my having watched his final concert film, I don't know, fucking 100 times. And I'll explain. So the the primary thing of this is that Donald Trump's biggest like defense or um I guess his seeking immunity in this particular thing is that this was their argument that the president is a special officer. This is his attorneys and his campaign and him making their argument. Not that he didn't engage in an insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution of the United States. They didn't. That's not the argument at all. The argument was he didn't take an oath to support the Constitution of the United States because that's something he took an oath to protect it, to defend it, not to abide by it. And that the president doesn't have to abide by the Constitution because he's not an officer of the government. He's above the government. He's the like the supreme. It's fucking stupid. He's the supreme executive of the United States, which, by the way, a myriad of times this has been ruled against over the years, especially around Nixon and the founding fathers. Like, for all this crap the Republicans put up about the founding fathers and what the founding fathers wanted and the founding fathers, the one thing they were fucking sure of was the equality under the law aspect of the president and everybody else, and that you do not have kingly or dictator powers, and literally the fact that the Constitution both limits the term and the standards by which the president can serve means he's under the Constitution. If the Constitution sets the rules about the fact that Congress pays him, he's under the Constitution. Without the Constitution, the office doesn't exist. You don't get to supersede. You don't get to come in there and say, well, yeah, technically the Constitution says that that the Congress pays my salary. But as the supreme executive officer over the Constitution, I now declare I make $10 million a year and there are no term limits. Also, until it is deemed necessary, I'm writing, and my executive orders have supreme power. Therefore, I'm writing an executive order that says, until someone can prove I am no longer capable of being president by 2/3 vote, we're not going to have any presidential elections. It's fucking goofy. Nobody believes this shit. Even Bill Barr. And part of this might be, for those of you who don't know, Bill Barr, the reason Trump wanted him in there and why his people thought Bill Barr was the perfect guy to head the DOJ was because Bill Barr has a history of believing in this sort of supreme executive power of the presidency. And he's been pushing for it largely since Reagan. And with a kind of a dig against what happened to Nixon, that Nixon should be able to, he believed that whole, well, if the president does it, then it is not a crime. That whole shit that Nixon was saying. So Bill Barr was born out of that and thought during the Reagan years, and especially during Iran-Contra, that the president should have sort of special, super secret powers to violate the laws of the country if he deems it, that everything is the suspension of habeas corpus during the Civil War. That, which was, again, an active war zone on American soil between two warring halves, and the existence of the fucking Constitution was, in question. Which is not the case with Iran-Contra or even any fucking wars across the world, including World War II. It's not the same shit. So the idea that the president can just suspend habeas corpus when there's not an actual war on our land that would impact whether or not, you could have ballots set up in areas because the Confederates wouldn't allow it. That kind of shit. This stuff that's happening in Ukraine right now, by the way, which is why they don't need to be having an election until this is settled. That's what the Civil War was about. So Bill Barr thinks that the president should have that power, or at least did. And they were setting about since Reagan, and certainly during Bush 1, with Bill Barr in there, of creating this kind of these shadow powers of the presidency that he can, and he already has a bunch, but there was a line they were like, yeah, but if we could just go this one step further, all it would take is, one kind of the next 9/11, and we could really just we wouldn't have to pass the Patriot Act. We could just implement it via secret courts and that kind of stuff. And we wouldn't have to re-up FISA or any of this shit. It would just exist in this kind of like Pentagon level, American security zone, right? And so Bill Barr and a bunch of these folks were like, that was their goal. That's what they were seeking to do. And so he sort of believes that no matter who the president is, they have kind of magic powers, that they have the ability to supersede the Constitution in an emergency. And here's the trick, like the Hulk is always angry, there's always an emergency. This is the Bill Barr school of thought. And it is exactly why Donald Trump put him in. Because his people told him this basic story. That Bill Barr is one of these guys that the president, thinks the president has amazing powers to do whatever the fuck he wants. So, imagine Trump's chagrin when he realizes that it's a covert power, not an overt power. And everything Trump does is all based on his fucking ego, so it has to be overt. Yes, the unitary executive. Exactly, Tamara, in the chat room. Exactly. They believe in that concept, that he, above all else, that there's a division of these powers, but in a jump ball, it's always the administration, and therefore the whole world, anytime there's a war anywhere, anytime there's terrorism anywhere, that's why the war on terror would go on forever. It's always a jump ball, and the president owns it. And if they can establish that through small laws over time in front of the SCOTUS and things like the Patriot Act, then eventually the president could just have this stroke of the pen idea, which does not exist, you fucking TYT dickheads. It doesn't. Hence the reason why you keep hearing about shit. Why is there this big fight about FISA on the floor? All this stuff. The reason you keep hearing these things is because there isn't a giant secret cabal. But that's what Trump wanted. Well, technically speaking, that's what Bill Barr and Jeff Sessions and any myriad of fucking old school Republicans, the Cheney crowd, like Dick Cheney's crowd, that's what they were fucking building. That they could, if they could put a puppet in place, being, George W. Bush in the head, then the vice president, who would have equal powers to the president ultimately in case something happens to him, again, in that jump ball, he can either make if the president goes along with what he says, he can do certain stuff. And then if eventually, I don't know what the standards are between where the death of the president, you caused it, but now you're the unitary executive as the vice president. Therefore, you pardon yourself for murdering the president. That kind of fucked up stuff is exactly what was discussed in a lot of these rooms, what it means, right? So, the shock I think that Trump went through was that this is a covert plan. This is a subtle plan to buttress up slowly the powers of the presidency. Now, this was still done when the Republicans hadn't fucked themselves into a cocked hat and become a regional party. Yeah. Hal has a tremendous imagination. Thank you very much, WW. I appreciate that. When they say you couldn't write that shit, okay. So this is the big the kind of big bloviated rollout of this is not what they wanted. What they wanted was a genuine point where the president in these jump balls could make the decision. And as long as they had that office, they could do it. Even if they don't have the House and the Senate, even if the SCOTUS is going against him, it's up to him. So the unitary executive idea. So, right. The problem is that's a subtle down low kind of a thing. That's Clear and Present Danger, the movie or whatever. That's Iran-Contra. It's none of your fucking business. And what the president talks about and when he talks about and who he talks about it with, and the automatic assertion of executive privilege is another one of those fucking stupid ideas, because you categorically say that and nobody can even start paring down what part you played in any of it, because all of the conversations are automatic like that, which is why it doesn't work, because you can have no oversight over the administration if there was an automatic thing. So Trump tried all this shit. None of it worked, by the way, because he tried it overtly. And in Bill Barr's mind, you have to chip away at the normal parts of the law to eventually get to this point, right? It's the boiling frog method, where they're like, okay, we'll take away this little piece, or we'll establish this in this court ruling and this court ruling, and it's a project, because these guys knew it it was wrong. They knew it. I mean, they believed it was right in their own ethics and morals, because they thought either the foe they were fighting was so bad that it warranted it, all this, whatever their justification was, but they knew it legally didn't exist. Trump, but pre-Trump, the Republicans, including George H.W. Bush, didn't believe that the president had these powers, and Bush even too knew this wasn't a thing. But slowly, Phil's going to be on in the next hour, by the way. He'll be in hour 2. I believe, if he's with us today, because he's stateside, so we'll see. But he should be with us. So over the last couple of decades, especially since Iran-Contra, they've had this chip on their shoulder about trying to establish these things. And they only do it when there's a Republican president in office. They keep doing this. They keep trying to up the powers of the presidency. With some point, I suppose, ad absurdum, it ends up being where they could establish on one particular day, all right, now it doesn't need elections. We could just say it's dangerous, and that's that. Right? Sounds like Iran. Yeah, well, you're not wrong. It's, there's a lot of similarities between how a lot of these, it's why Trump loves these dictators so much, because he thinks there's actually a system in place where that can happen. Now, the problem is, it's all based on bullshit. It's all based on this idea that the president is not an officer under the Constitution. He's above the Constitution, which legally, I don't know of any, and they haven't been able to show any legal argument for that has stuck. And everybody else, both in the SCOTUS and in the House, and especially the Senate, would have to agree with that sentiment to allow it to go forward. And the pushback, especially during Democratic presidencies that have sought to tighten down the presidential powers, has been counter to this strategy, because they can't coordinate it, because again, it's a covert, I wouldn't call it a plot or a plan. It's a strategy, something they want to accomplish. And they believe, let me be abundantly clear, I think Bill Barr believes in this idea that, that every day it's fucking Independence Day, the movie, and that Barr should be, Barr should be, believes that the president should be able to be the ref between the SCOTUS and the Congress ultimately, and that's where if you'll remember Bush going, "I'm the decider." That's where that talk came from. That's Cheney talking to him in meetings, going, "Well, you're the decider, Mr. President." That seed constantly planted. Okay, so they believe in this, that the office of the presidency is above the Constitution in that regard. And they've been trying to fight for that for a long time. And Trump has been as much a part of that as anybody else. He's just fucking dumb. That's the problem. That's the problem they ran into, is that Trump is fucking dumb. Now, in other areas, he's stupid. In a good area, a few areas, especially like real estate and interpersonal, relations between the genders, he's stupid. Like, he knows better, but he's just a fucking pig, so he behaves stupidly. But in this particular case, he's dumb, and he's willfully ignorant about this kind of thing, because there's a mix. Trump has this idea, is why he doesn't use email and shit like that, that he loves the idea of plausible deniability and also not leaving a paper trail. He's always loved that idea forever, which is exactly what you do when you think you have faith in your plan and you believe it's on the up and up, or it's successful or necessary or good or any of those things. Of course, you don't leave a paper trail. So their argument, Trump was above the Constitution and not an officer, and that he swore an oath to protect the Constitution, not to support the Constitution. Okay. Well, protecting it is supporting it is protecting it against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that would also mean not just people trying to destroy it, but the legalities therein and people trying to undermine it. of course, support means protect, and protect means support, and you don't get off because as president you swore an oath to to protect the Constitution, and like it's just dumb. It was a fucking ridiculous argument. Right. He doesn't believe in emails, but he writes notes on the back of classified documents. He also writes on the boxes. And so Walt T. Nada had to go to a fucking Office Depot or a Staples in West Palm Beach and buy new box tops for the boxes that had classified documents in it. That's all going to come out in the other thing. Like it's in their filings and you can read it. It's hilarious. But Trump had written on the fucking top of the box when they'd gone through them what he wanted to look at. Like he made markings that said, this one's got shit I need to go through. This one doesn't. In the weeks leading up to his attorney coming there, and then the 2 weeks that he had Walt bringing in the fucking boxes so he could go through, that the boxes had markings. So they got rid of them because it said, like, he probably wrote classified and put a dollar sign next to it, or classified, hide this, bury this with Ivana, right? Good Lord. Anyways, so that brings us back to the constitutional issue of it. The Colorado has decided that Trump engaged in an insurrection or rebellion against the United States after swearing an oath to support the Constitution. And like this mincing words about supporting versus protecting or whatever, they're like, fuck you. It's the same thing. And they made their ruling and they stayed it, I think, till January 6th, in which case they have to make an appeal. And Trump's crowd wants to go straight to, this brings us to the Lenny Bruce part. Trump's crowd wants to go straight to the Supreme Court with this. Everybody's like, we're going to take this to the Supreme Court. This is a big federal issue. Okay. And the reason he thinks this is because it's a conservative court, and I loaded it with 3 of these motherfuckers, and the 4th one, Clarence, is under under an ethical microscope right now, and he's probably hoping that I get back in so I can cover his ass. If he can stay in there long enough, I'll protect him, right? That's the racket of this. The problem I think they have, and we'll see what their actual strategy is if they bother. Is it January 4th? Thank you. January 4th. The problem that they have, I just said January 6th because that's when, that would be funny if it was the same day as the thing. It's kind of hard to, Your Honor, we'd like to move, if we could, to remove it from the docket today and punt it one day back or forward because it works against us in the argumentative phase if it actually happens on the anniversary of the thing our client did. So, yeah, here's the thing. You have to appeal on the state level before you go to the SCOTUS. Or the SCOTUS can punt it back down and say you haven't sought remedy where you can. You get denied based on, you didn't exhaust your remedies in state court. And the reason I know this is because that's what happened to Lenny Bruce. Lenny Bruce, when he got arrested with Howard L. Solomon and Solomon's wife, who also, threw herself onto the fire of free speech, they hired a lawyer for him that for his obscenity trial that was like a free speech advocate. And Lenny Bruce's thing was not free speech. Ironically enough, he was his whole thing was he did not believe he was not a free speech absolutist. He believed that there is a place and a time for this kind of talk. There is a place and a time. And if people pay to go in a room and hear this kind of stuff, then fuck off. It isn't about, I wouldn't do this in a park. I wouldn't do my act in front of, on the steps of the Catholic Church or anywhere else. Because I swear and the whole conversation about the court using the word cocksucker over and over again because he had said it. And he's like, these guys are really getting off on saying blah, 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 right? Is a great story about the obscenity trial itself, where they're arguing that he should, it's filth to even say these things, no matter the context. And then they're saying them in court without a regard to context. It's like, doesn't matter if it's not the context, then you guys are all committing obscenity right now just by restating it. That's the point. In a courtroom, and this was Lenny Bruce's argument, in a courtroom where we're arguing this point, we can say these things, but we wouldn't say them on a playground because there's an argument for obscenity or an argument against, disturbing the peace or any of this other shit, because it's about the venue. And when he was arrested for this, his attorneys went straight to the Supreme Court and tried to fight it on free speech grounds. And Thurgood Marshall is, our first black justice, was one of the people who denied his request in a famous exchange where the N-word was used by both of them in polite conversation. Super fucking weird. But that is absolutely, I mean, it's crazy. It's true. So Lenny, he brings this up. He takes it to the Supreme Court, and they go, you have not exhausted your remedy in state court. So they denied and punched it back down. Now, there's a question about how the Supreme Court, the highest court in Colorado, decided this. He's got to appeal to that Supreme Court again, but they've already made their decision. So it might be perfunctory, but there's still that step. If they jump that step, then they would have to go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court would have to get everybody together. They have to review all of it. They'd have to go through this huge process, get everybody together, have it, have hearings on it, agree on it or disagree on it, or, go, 5-4 or, 6-3 or whatever the fuck they think it's going to go to, punt him back to the states. But there's two problems. One is states' rights. This is an established right of the states themselves. The states have the right to decide these things. And he's got a remedy. Does anybody know what the remedy is? I read it before. There's a remedy. He has one. It already exists. And that remedy is 2/3 of both houses can vote to put him back on. Yeah. That's it. He's already, yes, Congress can override it, but it's not, in this particular instance, it's not an innocent till proven guilty situation, because no one has the right to be an officer of the United States. You don't have the right, you have the ability to run for president or federal office, but you can be denied that based on certain standards. Therefore, it is not an inalienable right. And it does not have the legal limitations like speech has on it that would preclude threats of violence, child pornography, private businesses or people in their own homes, or, federal lands, having a communication standard where you have to, keeping the peace is part of is the available speech aspect of it. And it's, if you can only use certain words to convey your remark, then it's not about your expression. It's about your, you're trying to insult or intimidate, and insulting and intimidating is not protected under free speech, right? It's the argument that you see a bunch of people going, I have the right to say anything I want about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict or whatever. And what do you say? I'm just yelling gas the Jews into a microphone 10 times. All right. Well, in the UK and also in the United States, that's a call to violence. And even in Australia, I think they've started pushing back against it. And they're like, yeah, that's not free speech or free expression. That's a call to violence. If you can't express your dissatisfaction without a call to violence, then your call to violence supersedes your expression. It's more important to you, and it is part of it. You are strategizing openly the murder of other people. That's not protected speech. That's participating in an attack on innocent civilians, right? So that's the rule. So it's a federal 2/3 vote. So the Congress, not the like State House of Colorado, has to vote. Yeah, the fighting words doctrine. So the Congress, the House and the Senate have to vote and put him back on the ballot at a 2/3 vote. Now, that also entails a big undertaking, which, hate speech is not free speech. It depends on what you mean by hate. Again, if you're not calling for violence against people, it is protected speech. The difference is, and again, hate speech is an addendum to and used as evidence in certain crimes, not because it in and of itself is a crime, but that it shows the motive of the person and an extenuating motive. So extenuating motives, especially, and I don't know that that's the term that they use specifically, but the idea that we've talked about this before, but like if I kill Dave because I don't like Dave and Dave doesn't like me and we're fighting and Dave tries to do something, and then I kill him and Dave's dead, I can go to jail for killing Dave and I'll get 6 years for manslaughter or 8 years for, if I hid the gun and lured him out into the woods and I knew he was going to pick a fight with me, it's first degree. And if he brought the gun and I picked it up and I knew he was unarmed and I shot him at that moment, it's second degree. If I could prove that he was bigger than me and he would have beat me up and I used his gun that he brought to kill him, then that was self-defense. There's a myriad of options, right? But either way, over the course of that, there are no, if I hated Dave and I talked about Dave, that's not hate speech, because human beings one-to-one can hate each other. If Dave is Irish and I hate the Irish and the Irish are the thing and I'm going any Irish person at all, Dave's just exempt, he's just the closest Irish person I can kill, then that's hate speech that adds on, that would make it a hate crime, because every person that's Irish is in danger from me as a person, and that changes the kind of danger I am to the community, right? Because I'm not only are Irish people unsafe around me, but I am a destabilizing factor in the community, and I have beyond my own, I would say irrational, but this person would believe that they were being rational in this this hatred, that if they believe those people have to go, then they are a danger to anyone who not only is Irish, but looks Irish or is around someone who's Irish, right? So therefore, that's why I believe the hate crime statutes should exist and need to exist. Because it's the same thing. And by the way, it's the extension of the cop killer ruling, I guess, in general, onto the rest of society. That the idea is that if somebody will kill a cop, they'll kill anybody. And if they'll kill a cop, they'll shoot at all the cops. And if we don't have any cops, everybody's fucked. So we got this person goes away for extra long time. If they're not afraid of shooting at a cop, then they're definitely not afraid of shooting at an unarmed civilian. Therefore, we extend that to them. The same thing is true of racial groups and minority groups. If they have or even a majority group for that matter, because you can't just target a larger group because you're outnumbered, because you're in a minority of that area, right? So, 1 second. Somebody's okay. So, you're half Irish and English. Well, then at some point, some set of your grandparents were not fond of each other at the moment of conception. Dave has left the house. Dave's not here, man. So now, yes. And by the way, patreon.com/HalSparks. Please join. We're trying to hit 1,000. We'll get there eventually. Price of a cup of coffee a month or even a week if you feel like joining at that level, or every 2 weeks. And you can do it all like in one fell swoop as a yearly subscriber. That helps us a lot too. Helps us get our number up. But month by month, you guys are the ones that really guarantee that we have a baseline so that the show can go on, and we don't have to go like, ooh, super chats are low. We'll be okay. All right. So, anyways, where were we? Oh yes. So, this idea that he has to seek his remedies through the available ones. And to the SCOTUS, it's pretty cut and dry in the Constitution. There's not a lot of argument about whether or not, it doesn't say anything in there what the standards of the states will be. It doesn't say you have to be convicted, because obviously, they didn't have court trials of the Confederates, right? They were pretty, because it had just happened. Oh, thanks, Arch Knight. I appreciate that. Thank you for letting me know. I forgot that that was true. That's lovely. I will remedy that. Okay, here we go. So, um, the Supreme Court has to be the remedy of last resort. He's already got a remedy. That's a vote in the House and the Congress, in the House and the Senate, and he can lose that and then try to go to the SCOTUS and go, the standard is too high, and this is party politics have decided that I can't get a fair trial there, and therefore because I guess there aren't enough Republicans, I don't have a shot at overdoing this. Therefore, I'm, the SCOTUS has to rule that this is a political act, an overt political act, and that they've got to have a say in this. And the ultimate say is whether or not you have to be found guilty of an insurrection or just a knowing participant in it. And since he fucking said, "Come on January 6th, it's gonna be wild," and all that shit, and then said, "Walk down there peacefully and patriotically, and I'll go down there with you. But if Mike Pence doesn't do the right thing, you're going to have to be strong, or you're not going to have a country left." What does that mean to the people who arrive at the Capitol and Mike Pence suddenly isn't, quote unquote, strong? Right? So, anyways, fucking fascinating. So, this is easily a 6-month process. We go to January 4th. The SCOTUS can't rush this because it's definitive. Because I got news for you. That means that none of the Jan 6ers who are on camera, if you were on camera in the Capitol that day saying, we're going to put a bullet in Pelosi's head or what have you, and all those fuckers, none of them can run for federal office. If you were known to be there and that's what you believed you were engaging in, and literally there's a differentiation between, there's probably people there that will make a case in front of the thing that I was not participating in that. I just thought I was there, yelling, and then they started herding us through a door, and then I walked through and went out the other side, never struck anybody, said 4 more years, but I wasn't intending on doing anything while I was there, and all my video says, "Oh my God, we're in the Capitol," but I never said I'm here to fucking stop the steal or any of that shit on camera or whatever, so you can't prove I was part of the insurrection. I was just washed up in the crowd there. Those people could make an argument in front of their state court that they should be allowed to run for House or Senate or some shit in the future. They should be able to. But like Jacob Chansley or whatever, the fucking QAnon shaman, that motherfucker shouldn't be allowed to, because he argued before and after that that's what should happen. Just because he chickened out once he was in there, you don't get a do-over. You participated in this. The amazing thing is that a good portion of the Jan 6ers are arguing that since it was a failed insurrection and that they all backed off and went home, that suddenly it wasn't one. It wasn't an insurrection anymore. I didn't participate in an insurrection. I said, "Hey guys, stop." After the cops were already beaten and bloodied, I said, "Hey guys, leave them alone." After I had stepped over the blood of the police officers on my way into the building, and then I hammered the gavel and jerked off in the fucking well of the Senate, then I went home. So technically speaking, it's kind of like, I mean, the analogy would be, Your Honor, yes, I was engaged in a group assault of this woman, but I never got an erection, no matter how hard I tried to assault her. Therefore, it wasn't a sexual assault because I was incapable of getting an erection at that moment. That's the argument. That's the insurrections are. It's fucking gross, and it's dumb, and it doesn't work. You don't, again, in mid bank robbery, if you're like, the bank's empty, fuck, they take the money out on Wednesday. What? You said Thursday they don't have as many guards. That's why. Fuck me. Oh, okay. All right, sir. It makes sense. God damn it. Shit. That's what this is. Like, just stupid. So, and by the way, we're a few minutes away. I think Phil will be with us in a few. I think we'll see. Let me check in. I have to say, we're good. Oh, and by the way, hold on. I had so much stuff to cover yesterday, thanks to our dear friend CSL. Um, and dude, where we go? Look, look for Philip. Okay, is he? Are you telling me to try and find him, or he should be popping in because he should be good in a couple minutes? Yeah, he'll come in on time, I think. Okay, we're good. So yeah, so there are three stages of this. One is the appeal of they'll appeal the ruling. So they can make an argument in front of them before they go to the SCOTUS. And they could say, we got to go to the SCOTUS because we're running out of time. And again, that was if you ever watch, and I recommend it, by the way, people say it's sad or whatever, but I still find it funny and fantastic. And it's very illuminating about Lenny Bruce himself. If you watch the Lenny Bruce concert movie, which is on YouTube, it's his last performance before he died. And it's he could only perform in San Francisco and in Vegas at a couple of these like underground rooms. Nobody else would hire him because there were always like police there ready to bust him for this stuff. It was just fucked up. And he talks, he has his trial transcript, including stuff from the Supreme Court, the remedies he was seeking. And you could see him emotionally go through a few of these moments, like just dealing with the stress of it. Thank the objective, Hal, make people laugh. Destin Hoffman biopic of Lenny Bruce is good too. It is, but honestly, I don't think Hoffman bothered to do the character. Yeah, George Carlin got a brace. Well, no, George Carlin, interestingly enough, he wasn't at fault. The venue ruling became kind of a standard, and he was arrested and he won on the venue standard because he was making the case. These are the 7 words you can't say on television. Fuck, shit, piss, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits, and he breaks them down. And tits doesn't even belong on the list, man. Like that, like it was a great bit. But the point he was making in the bit even is that you can say this here, but you can't say it on TV, right? Yeah, and when in his court ruling, it was different because somebody played it on the radio. They played his bit on the radio. They didn't get his permission to play the bit on the radio. This is KPFA in San Francisco, played it on the air. And as a fuck you to the FCC. And so of course it got in trouble. Like the station got in trouble, and the DJ that played it got in trouble, and they sucked George into it, but he didn't get permission for his bit that he knew full well there was an environment for it. And in San Francisco in particular, there are porn theaters, there were like sex shows and all kinds of stuff. They had already established the rules inside the city, and California had already established their rules within it. New York and like, where were the two places Lenny got busted in places where they did not have those standards, where everything was underground or involved with the mafia. So that all the stuff, all the clubs he was playing that had strippers in them or whatever were run with the tacit awareness of everybody, but they wouldn't bust them unless it crossed a line, unless something shitty went down. Can't say tits, but you can say well, cocksucker covered multiple things. The idea is that it was a hyphenate, and he goes through later. He had an addendum to that bit, but the point was he wrote him that way because it rolls off the tongue. No pun intended. But yeah, so the rights aspect of it. But when Lenny Bruce went to the Supreme Court, they said you have not exhausted your remedies in state court, and to paraphrase what Lenny Bruce said was, he goes, I'm talking to Thurgood Marshall, and he's black, so I think I'll get him on something he'll understand. He goes, Your Honor, it's like, and he used the N-word, and so did Thurgood Marshall. He goes, Your Honor, it's like I'm a black man in the South who's got to use the bathroom. And by the time I get the relief, it's going to be too late. And Thurgood Marshall said, Well, you're not black. And he goes, I know, it's an analogy. Denied. Hi. Yeah, I agree. Slayer chick. I think we all agree on that. Whatever, but it has within it and the act itself. And again, that was the word, by the way. The reason Carlin used that word in particular instead of singularizing cock is that cock itself you can say because it's got a dual meaning. It's a rooster. It's in the Bible. The cock crowed 3 times. The cock crowed. Like he makes jokes about that. Ass and cock are both in the Bible, right? So both of those, like you could say them. It's just the context. But once you attach sucker to it, then all the context goes out the window and off you go. So the limitations there are ahead of him. Now I see Phil waiting in the wings. Very exciting. He'll be with us. He's still stateside, I'm assuming, in this, so we'll get him in a minute. But as I see it, and we'll see how it plays out. You know, they may make a special case because Super Tuesday's coming up in March, and there's a time crunch aspect of it. But again, that was the argument that Lenny Bruce made. Lenny Bruce made the argument that, you know, Your Honor, by the time I get the relief, it'll be too late. It'll take too long to go to the states to get my, to get this remedy for my situation. And the Supreme Court at that point said, basically, like, tough shit. And so Trump is in the exact same position that Lenny Bruce was in. If indeed he does this, if indeed he has he tries to skip a step, there is legal precedent for saying, no, you got to climb the ladder one rung at a time, both up and down. And if we bounce it back to the state, they've still got to hear it. That doesn't mean it stands unless we totally wipe out the law and we bounce it to the Congress. The problem is, again, there is already a remedy in place, which is the hardest part for the Trump team to get around. And the biggest argument we will see is that Trump already has a remedy for the Colorado situation, which is he can get the Congress, he can lobby Congress to vote, and he can get 2/3 of the vote and get back on the ballot. That's his remedy. It's in the Constitution, clear as fucking day. He can't argue, well, support and defend or different words or any of that shit. And so it'll be interesting that the Supreme Court can't take away a right that's in the Constitution. It's the 14th Amendment leaves that to the states. And the states do not have to, they can have their own fucking standard. Now, will this open up a can of worms where, people try to mess with the word insurrection? Maybe. But I don't think any of them have an interest in lowering the standard of what it means to do it, like not shoring up the border because Biden has a bad border policy is not enough to qualify, no matter what Lauren Boebert says, as an insurrection or, fomenting a rebellion against the United States by, Guatemalan economic migrants. Like, get the fuck out of here. They're never going to that will never fly. And the standard is ridiculous. And no state wants that to be their standard because then there's no reason to fucking campaign in that state. Nobody's going to go there. Nobody's like, your campaign offices are fucked. It's a waste of time. You're going to spend all your time on other states and their electoral college votes. So it's like he's got to climb up the fucking ladder one rung at a time. And if he skips a rung, he ties the hands of the Supreme Court to some degree. Now we'll see if, because it's his court by a large margin, he put 3 of those fuckers on there. But if he gets back in office, from what he says, he wants to be a dictator for a day, and anybody who thinks he'll hang up that fucking robe the next day is a lunatic. So if the Supreme Court, everybody on the Supreme Court has to know that one of the first things that a dictator does is eliminate anybody who would put a check on his power, either nullifying their ability or wiping them out entirely. And the SCOTUS is the easiest one because there's a lot fewer of them than, say, the Congress. So, this is going to be fucking fascinating. And speaking of fucking fascinating, welcome to the show, our dear friend, Philip Ittner, joining us from America.
Gainesville, Florida, no less.
What? Where home of the Gators?
Yeah. home of the Gators, home of the
where
Gators, and
my
home of
wrestling coach's wife was from, and their last name was Gaines, and they were from Gainesville, and yet had no personal stake in the city, to their much to their chagrin.